Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In a small town seemingly untouched by time, the streets were paved with dust and silence. Emma, a 22-year-old mother, walked briskly toward the corner supermarket, clutching the nearly empty bag containing her sleeping baby. Her little boy's cheeks were red from the cold, and his breath condensed in the icy morning air. Her wallet was almost empty. The few bills she had would barely be enough to buy diapers. It was all that was left of her meager weekly wages, earned at the factory working long hours, with her only respite being the loving gaze of her child. She knew that without those diapers, she wouldn't be able to make it to the beginning of the month. Emma walked down the aisles, counting every penny. The cheapest diapers cost almost everything she had, and every second in the store was a silent battle between necessity and shame. As she finally placed the package on the counter, a wave of unease washed over her. What if the money wasn't enough? What if she had to leave empty-handed? It was at that moment that he appeared. An elegant man, dressed in a dark suit, had been observing the scene for a few moments. His gaze was not that of a mere customer, but of a watchful, almost protective observer. He approached the counter and, in a soft but firm voice, asked, "Is everything all right, miss?" Emma, blushing and embarrassed, shook her head, unable to answer. Her eyes betrayed everything: fatigue, fear, and infinite love for her child. The millionaire smiled, and with a quick gesture, he placed some bills on the counter, covering the rest of the sum. "Consider this a loan to repay, or not. You have better things to do than worry about diapers." Emma froze, unable to utter a word. She gazed at her baby in her arms and felt a wave of emotion wash over her. This simple gesture, this unexpected support, had just transformed what seemed like an ordinary day into a moment that would mark her life forever. And in a corner of the store, the millionaire watched in silence, intrigued by this young mother who carried the weight of the world on her shoulders, without ever losing her smile. He didn't yet know that this encounter would change his own life forever. Emma returned home, the bag of diapers clutched to her chest, her heart still pounding with the excitement of the supermarket. The cold bit at her skin, but nothing could compare to the warmth she felt seeing her baby in his crib. The little boy opened his eyes and gave her a tired smile, unaware of the stress his mother had gone through for him. Sitting on the old sofa in their modest apartment, Emma slumped down, exhausted. The faded walls seemed to draw closer, and the oppressive silence reminded her that she and her child were alone in facing life. She wondered if she would ever escape this precarious situation. Every bill, every meal, every diaper change became a daily struggle. The next morning, Emma received an unexpected call. A calm and polite voice introduced itself. "Hello, Miss Emma. My name is Richard Carter. I met you yesterday at the supermarket. I would like to propose something to you." Emma, initially incredulous, thought it was a mistake. But Richard's voice was sincere, almost warm, and she felt a curiosity stirring within her. He suggested they meet at a quiet cafe in town to discuss an opportunity he wanted to present to her. Hesitantly, but driven by an intuition she didn't fully understand, Emma accepted. She didn't yet know that this simple coffee would mark the beginning of a turning point in her life. Sitting at the cafe table, Emma saw Richard approach. His neat appearance and confident smile contrasted sharply with the weariness she had carried for months. He sat down and, after a few pleasantries, looked her straight in the eyes. "I know your life isn't easy. But I believe you have potential you don't even see yourself. I'd like to help you, and maybe even change your destiny." Emma felt a mixture of astonishment and fear. Who was this man to speak to her like that? And why her? Yet, deep inside her, a glimmer of hope began to shine. On that day, she did not yet know that this encounter would transform not only her life, but that of her baby, and that the road to a better future had just begun. After their meeting at the cafe, Richard Carter quickly offered Emma practical help. He began by providing immediate support: groceries for the week, clothes for her baby, and a deposit to pay off overdue bills. Emma accepted tentatively, embarrassed by such generosity, but her heart overflowed with gratitude. Richard wasn't just financially generous. He wanted to understand Emma's life, her dreams, her struggles. He invited her to talk about her aspirations, her past, and what she wanted for her son. Emma, initially wary, slowly opened up. She recounted the sleepless nights, the endless days working at the factory, and that constant feeling of powerlessness in the face of obstacles. Richard listened attentively, without judgment, and made him a promise. "Emma, I can't erase everything you've been through, but I can offer you a chance to build something different. A chance to create a stable future for you and your son." A few days later, Richard offered Emma an unusual opportunity, a small position at his philanthropic foundation. It wasn't a conventional job, but a role where she could learn, grow, and contribute. Emma hesitated. She had never worked in that kind of environment, and the fear of failure paralyzed her. But Richard had seen something in her, a silent strength, a determination that few possessed. He assured her, "You are not alone on this path, Emma. I will be there to guide you." With a mixture of fear and hope, Emma accepted. It was the first real step towards a different life, where the difficulties of the past were no longer an inevitability but a starting point. This chapter marked the beginning of her transformation. The young mother, who just yesterday struggled to buy diapers for her baby, was now about to discover that life could hold surprises far beyond her wildest dreams. Emma arrived at Richard's foundation for her first day of work. The spacious, light-filled building was a stark contrast to her modest apartment. The hallways were decorated with photos of humanitarian projects, smiling children receiving aid, and volunteers hard at work. Emma felt both intimidated and awestruck. Richard welcomed her warmly and introduced her to the team, passionate men and women, each specializing in a particular field, ranging from education to helping families in difficulty. They all looked at her with curiosity, some with skepticism. A young assistant, Lisa, whispered to a colleague, "Who is this girl? It looks like she's never worked in an office." Emma felt a pang of embarrassment, but Richard intervened. "Emma is here to learn, but also to share her life experience. Listen to her. You might be surprised." The day began with simple tasks, filing documents, preparing files for families helped by the foundation, and welcoming visitors. Yet, each task felt like a challenge. Emma had never worked in a formal environment, and the fear of making a mistake paralyzed her. At noon, Richard invited her to lunch in his office. Sitting opposite him, Emma felt vulnerable but also supported. "Emma, I didn't give you this chance to feel intimidated," he said gently. "You've overcome more challenges than many here. All you have to do is be yourself and learn." Encouraged by his words, Emma felt empowered. That afternoon, she was attentive, asking questions, taking notes, and trying to understand every detail. Even Lisa, who had doubted her that morning, began to observe her with respect. However, it wasn't all easy. Emma sometimes faced incomprehension from some colleagues who had grown up in more privileged environments. There were gentle taunts, condescending looks, but also sincere advice that helped her progress. Every difficult moment was a test, but she felt within herself the strength not to give up. At the end of the day, as she left the building with her bag a little lighter than when she arrived, Emma understood something important: she was no longer alone with her problems. And little by little, the dream of a better future for her and her baby began to take shape. A few weeks had passed since Emma's first day at the foundation. Every morning, she arrived with a mixture of apprehension and excitement. She had begun to understand how the files worked, to familiarize herself with the procedures, and above all, she was beginning to feel useful. One day, Richard invited her to participate in a special project, an initiative to support young single mothers in difficulty. The goal was to provide them not only with material assistance, but also with advice, training, and psychological support. "Emma," Richard said, smiling, "you've been through what these young women are going through today. You could be an inspiration to them. I want you to be part of this project." Emma felt a mixture of pride and fear. She had never thought she could one day help others in this way. But Richard assured her that he would be there to support her, and that his personal experience would be a valuable asset. The following weeks were intense. Emma met several young mothers, listened to their stories, shared her own, and helped them find solutions to their problems. She realized that, despite their difficulties, these women had incredible strength, similar to the strength she had had to find within herself to survive. One afternoon, while helping a young mother named Sophie fill out a form to apply for benefits, Emma felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Sophie looked at her gratefully. "Thank you, Emma. If you weren't here, I don't know what I would have done." Emma smiled, feeling her heart warm. This was exactly what she wanted, to make a difference, to show that even in distress, one could find hope and strength. Richard watched the scene from a distance and felt a quiet pride. He knew that Emma was not only changing her own life, but that she was also becoming a beacon of light for others. This project would become the turning point of her new life. From that moment on, Emma understood that her worth was not measured solely by her difficult past or her limited money. She had an inner strength that could transform not only her own life, but also the lives of those around her. Emma had been working on the project for young mothers for several months. Her confidence grew every day, and she was even beginning to be recognized by the team as an essential member. Yet, life still had one more test in store for her. One morning, Richard informed her that a major evaluation was about to take place. The foundation was receiving a substantial grant, but it was contingent on a detailed report on the effectiveness of the projects. Richard asked Emma to prepare part of the report, including the stories of the mothers she had supported and the concrete impact of the initiative. "Emma," he said, "I know it's a lot to ask, but I think you're the best person to do it. Show them the heart of the project." Emma agreed, but anxiety gripped her. She had never written a report of this importance, and the fear of failure paralyzed her. She spent several sleepless nights rereading every word, correcting every sentence, and ensuring that each story reflected reality with honesty and emotion. As she was finishing her report, an unexpected event occurred. Her baby fell ill and required an urgent visit to the hospital. Emma felt her world crumble. How could she possibly juggle her role at the foundation with her responsibilities as a mother? Tears welled up in her eyes as she clutched her sick child. It was at that moment that Richard entered his apartment. Seeing the situation, he made an immediate decision. "Emma, you've done everything you could. I'll take care of submitting the report instead, but you must stay with your son. Nothing is more important than his health." Emma's gratitude was immense. This seemingly simple gesture showed how much Richard believed in her and truly supported her. She then understood that asking for help was not a weakness, but a strength. The next day, the report was submitted and received praise. The grants were awarded, allowing the project to expand and help even more families. Emma, despite her exhaustion, felt a profound sense of pride. She had overcome an ordeal, protected her child, and contributed to the success of something greater than herself. This experience strengthened her determination and confidence. Emma understood that obstacles were part of the journey, but that each challenge could become an opportunity to grow and get closer to her dreams. Months passed, and Emma's life began to change in a tangible way. Thanks to her work at the foundation, she had acquired new skills, a valuable network of contacts, and above all, a self-confidence she had never known before. Her income was now stable, enough to pay for a safer and more comfortable apartment for herself and her baby. For the first time in a long time, Emma could breathe without the constant fear of lacking the essentials. She decorated the small apartment carefully, each object chosen with love to create a warm space for her son. One day, Richard came to visit her at the apartment. He was impressed by the progress made, the welcoming environment, the organization of her workspace, and above all, the expression of serenity on Emma's face. "You see," he said with a smile, "you are transforming your life, Emma. You are no longer just a survivor, you are a builder." Emma felt immense pride, but also a slight doubt. She wondered if she could maintain this stability. Richard, perceptive, noticed her hesitation. "Every success is accompanied by fear and doubt," he said softly. "But remember, you have already overcome the impossible. And you are no longer alone." Shortly after, Richard offered Emma an even more unexpected opportunity to help organize a fundraising event for the foundation, aimed at doubling the resources available to families in need. Emma was initially hesitant. The idea of speaking in front of an audience or managing complex logistics terrified her. "You've already helped these mothers," said Richard. "You know their stories better than anyone. If anyone can touch people's hearts and show them the importance of this project, it's you." With courage, Emma accepted. She began to plan, organize, and even speak up at preparatory meetings. Each small success gave her confidence, and she felt that her life, once dominated by fear and uncertainty, was finally taking a positive and stable direction. This chapter marked for Emma the beginning of a series of concrete victories, small but significant, which would cement her new beginning and show that, even after the greatest difficulties, light could return to her life. The day of the fundraising event arrived. The grand hall was elegantly decorated, fresh flowers, banners in the foundation's colors, and photos of the families they helped. Volunteers were busy with the final preparations, and Emma, dressed in a simple but smart outfit, felt her heart racing. Richard accompanied him and gave him one last piece of advice. "Remember, Emma, you speak from the heart. People sense sincerity. Do it for these mothers, for your son, and for yourself." Emma stepped onto the small platform in front of about 100 people. At first, her voice trembled slightly. But when she began to tell her story, her struggles, the sleepless nights, the fear of not being able to provide the bare minimum for her baby, something changed. She saw faces in the room tighten, eyes well up, and she knew she was touching hearts. Then she spoke about the young mothers she was supporting, their difficulties but also their courage. She showed how, thanks to the foundation, they had begun to rebuild their lives. With each word, she felt her own strength growing. At the end of her speech, the room erupted in applause. Several donors came to see her personally to express their admiration and support. Some even offered to invest more in the foundation, impressed by her commitment and sincerity. Richard, observing the scene from the back of the room, felt immense pride. Emma was no longer just a recipient of his help, she had become a leader, a voice for those who had no voice. That evening, after the event, Emma and Richard discussed new prospects, additional grants, partnerships with other organizations, and even the possibility for Emma to oversee a new program dedicated to mothers in difficulty. Emma then understood one essential thing: life had not only offered her a second chance, it had given her the opportunity to change not only her own destiny, but also that of many others. And that evening, returning home with her baby, Emma felt that hope and determination had never left her. She knew the challenges would continue, but now she possessed the strength and courage to face them. Following the success of the fundraising event, Emma was officially appointed coordinator of a new program for young mothers. It was a huge responsibility, supervising volunteers, organizing workshops, and managing the budget allocated by the foundation. For Emma, it was both an honor and a colossal challenge. The first few weeks were challenging. She had to juggle meetings, phone calls, field visits, and her life as a single mother. At times, she felt overwhelmed. Some of the mothers she was working with were facing extremely complex situations: domestic violence, crushing debt, lack of stable housing, and Emma had to find quick and effective solutions. One day, a particularly critical situation arose. A young mother, Julia, risked losing custody of her child due to complex administrative issues. Emma took on the case. She spent hours filling out forms, contacting social services, and passionately defending Julia. Richard watched from afar, impressed by Emma's tenacity. "You have this incredible ability to turn crises into opportunities," he said. "And people are starting to notice." Thanks to her dedication, Julia was able to retain custody of her child, and her family's situation was stabilized. This episode enhanced Emma's reputation within the foundation and among its beneficiaries. She became a living example that perseverance and empathy could truly change lives. But Emma's biggest challenge wasn't just professional, it was personal. She had to learn to organize herself, to ask for help when needed, and not to let responsibilities overwhelm her. She discovered the value of mutual support, Richard's guidance, and the team she now worked with as a family. Through these growing responsibilities, Emma understood a crucial truth: strength comes not only from individual success, but also from the ability to inspire and support others. Every victory she achieved for these young mothers was a victory for herself, proof that even those who start with nothing can accomplish extraordinary things. Emma had found her place at the foundation, but a new and unexpected challenge would test her values and integrity. During a meeting with financial partners, Richard presented him with an opportunity: a very large donation, capable of funding numerous additional programs for mothers in difficulty. But there was an unspoken condition: one of the donors wanted certain rules to be circumvented in the selection of beneficiaries to ensure that the money benefited a specific group rather than those who needed it most. Richard, aware of the importance of the gift but respectful of principles, looked at Emma. "What would you do, Emma? Accepting this gift could help many people, but at the expense of our ethics." Emma felt her heart sink. Accepting meant betraying everything she had stood for from the start and using her power to benefit a select few instead of those who truly needed help. Refusing could jeopardize funding for vital programs. For several days, she reflected, weighing every consequence. She consulted some mothers, sought the advice of trusted colleagues, and returned to the foundation to analyze all possible options. Her decision could not be impulsive. Finally, during a crucial meeting with the donor, Emma spoke confidently. "Sir, we appreciate your generosity, but we cannot accept your condition. The foundation exists to help those most in need, without favoritism. We would be delighted to receive your donation if you agree to abide by this rule." The silence that followed was heavy. But, against all odds, the donor agreed. He had been moved by Emma's courage and honesty. The funding was finally granted, without compromising on ethics. Richard congratulated her privately. "Emma, you have proven that true strength lies in loyalty to one's values. You have become a leader that no one can unduly influence." Emma then realized that the difficult choices were the ones that truly defined who she was. She understood that helping others meant not only providing them with resources, but also standing up for what was right, even in the face of pressure. This moral dilemma, overcome with integrity, marked a turning point in Emma's life. She was no longer just a survivor or a coordinator, but a true moral force and an example to all those she helped. Years had passed since that first encounter at the supermarket. Emma was no longer the frightened and helpless young mother counting her last pennies to buy diapers. She had become a confident woman, respected and deeply loved by her community. The program she oversaw was thriving, helping dozens of young mothers regain their independence and dignity. The stories she had once told hesitantly were now inspiring examples of courage and perseverance. Every success, every smile restored, was a victory over poverty and fear. One morning, Richard came to visit her at the foundation. He sat opposite her and said, "Emma, you have changed the lives of so many people. But above all, you have changed your own. You are living proof that, even in the darkest times, there are opportunities and miracles for those who dare to believe." Emma smiled, feeling a deep emotion wash over her. She thought back to that day at the supermarket, to that bag of diapers, and to that unexpected gesture that had changed her life. That moment now seemed to belong to another time, but it remained etched in her memory as the starting point of an incredible transformation. A few weeks later, Emma was invited to a public event to share her story. She took to the stage in front of a large audience and spoke with confidence and emotion. "There are days when everything seems lost, when every choice seems impossible. But sometimes all it takes is a helping hand, someone who believes in you, for everything to change. Believe in yourself, never lose hope, and know that every little gesture can transform a life, even your own." The applause was enthusiastic and heartfelt. Emma, looking at the room full of touched and inspired faces, felt immense pride. She had not only saved her own life and that of her son, but she had also created a legacy of solidarity and courage. Back home, she took her son in her arms, and for the first time in a long time, she felt completely at peace. The struggles of the past, the sleepless nights, and the sacrifices had not been in vain. She had found the light at the end of the tunnel, and along the way, she had learned that true wealth is not only material, but that which transforms lives and inspires hope. Emma now knew that no obstacle was insurmountable when you had the courage, determination, and heart to fight. She smiled as she watched her son play in the bright living room, knowing that the best was yet to come.